way that Kickstarter works is it's crowdfunding, it's pre-order. So what you do is you develop your concept, you have to develop all the materials you need. For a physical object, you need to actually have a working prototype. It can't just be a 3D model. You need to actually show real photographs of it. You have to do a video, you have to do a whole bunch of stuff, and when you put it up on here, what you do is you have to set a goal, and you have to set a timeline. So the goal is a financial goal. If you don't hit that goal in the timeline that you set, you don't get any money, your backers don't get charged. So it's sort of an all or nothing, which means that you've got to really focus and make sure that you get things going pretty quickly, because unlike an Etsy or an Amazon or any other type of e-commerce where you may be looking at the long game, Kickstarter is a very tight timeline, 30 days, 45 days. I actually did mine just for 3 weeks because I want to get them out before the holiday season and make it sort of use some Christmas gift type messaging. So on this just ran, last month. The last shipment of them went out today. So, as with Etsy, as with everything else, photography is important. Showing the context is important. The description is important. The video is important. All of that stuff. And as far as pricing goes, pricing's maybe a little more complicated, or at least a little different on Kickstarter. So what you can do is you can set here all of the different, they're called reward levels. And basically you give me money, I give you stuff. And the stuff has to be the stuff that the project's all about. And what's great is that you could set a limited number of backers at each level. So here for this earliest bird, 50 backers. So the first 50 people who came in, they could get this super special price. So that motivates them to jump on, and basically you're sort of playing with a scarcity model in a few different tiers, and it's really just to save people money. That's sort of the lever you can pull. And you could set up 20 different levels, but you've got to kind of balance out what's easy to communicate, what pricing tiers make sense. You have to do the math so that someone who's buying a whole bunch of them isn't getting a worse price than someone who's buying less. But for the most part, setting up Kickstarter takes a little longer than you might think if you're used to doing other product type pages, because there's a lot of information people are expecting to see. You have to talk about your risks. You have to talk about your all the manufacturing process, and essentially what you're doing is you're promising people. You have to convince people to trust you. You have to convince people that this is a cool product that they want. You have to convince them that you can actually execute on it and deliver it. And you have basically like this part of the screen to catch their attention, and you have the video to really convince them. And then after that, as they read down, that's just more and more and more layering information. But overall, doing the actual Kickstarter page, the effort and time required to do that pales in comparison by far to the effort to get whatever it is manufactured. So I didn't make these myself. It required, I thought, okay, well, I'll call up the local CNC shop, and they'll crank these out, and they'll be a few bucks each. No, I really wanted them made in the USA. For me, that was like really important. They're half made in the USA. So I called and emailed over 40 different manufacturers, small shops, large shops. I thought it'd be really cool to do it here in New Haven. There's a lot of aerospace and things like that, and laser sintering. I even did some 3D printing in metal, which got pretty close, but not exactly right. So in order to do this little quarter-sized thing, there are at least 4 distinct processes had to go into it. I wound up working with a company, a manufacturer out of California, who owns a factory in China. So they did part of the process there. They did all the finishing and additional parts of the process here in the US. And it took from when I first designed it and used these 3D printers right here in this room to start prototyping it and figuring out what it should be, it took like a year and a half to figure out all the manufacturing parts of it. And if I had not, there are some nightmare stories with Kickstarters that, people start them and it's like a year later or it's 2 years later and, they still haven't delivered them. I've even backed a few like that. And it's like, oh, I forgot I backed this a year and a half ago. If I hadn't gone through all of that, all that stuff with the manufacturer up front, I would have been one of them, because I thought it's not going to be hard to find a manufacturer. I want to give you money, you're going to make, what I thought was a pretty simple thing. So imagine if there's a moving part. So ultimately, the idea behind doing it was, it's something that I wanted. If I had seen it in a store, I probably would have bought it, and that was sort of my line, for which prompted me to go ahead and do it. If I had known that it would take that long to manufacture it, I might have decided to do something different for my first Kickstarter, but ultimately it was a good process. I learned a lot about the Kickstarter, all that. My day job is working in e-commerce, so I work with clients to help them sell a lot of stuff online. And it helped having that background in some ways, but Kickstarter is still very different from selling online. I will next month be opening a Shopify store. I put this up on Amazon and things like that. But to do this was a pretty interesting thing. There are definitely quirks to Kickstarter. There are definitely really important things that I learned by doing the initial research about how to set it up. Probably the best tip that I got was, if you hit 20% of your Kickstarter goal within the first few days, you've got like an 80% chance of hitting your goal. So initially, when I launched at 8 a.m. on a Monday, I said, I don't care about hitting my goal, I just need to hit 20% by Wednesday. And that was where I focused all my effort, basically it's marketing. I did Facebook advertising, which was really effective. You can target really well. I had spent a few months building up an audience on Facebook for everyday carry, which is sort of a buzzword around this type of tool, multi-tools, things like that. And hit the goal, exceeded it by close to double, which was, for me, that was basically really what I wanted to do, because when I placed the order for units, I wanted to order enough to fulfill Kickstarter, but then have some that I could then retail or wholesale left over. And the Kickstarter was really intended to pay for that first run, and I didn't want to hit the point where it's like, okay, well, I sold 20 more than my first run, so now I have to do, like, after that, another 1,000 made, and now I've got, no money. So, so this was, like, really what I was looking for. And when you sell a lot of stuff all at once, and this from wholesale, you've got to do, you're not doing one thing. Everything you do is multiplied times like 500. So basically I had to package 500 coins, and to package each one required 6 distinct steps. And then to, do the labels and, print them all out and get everything, like everything you do is multiplied times 100, 200, 500. And that's, with Kickstarter, that's just how it is. But now, it went from 500 packages to okay, now I'm stopped. So I think a different psychology, but it's a good way to get into the game. But it's very different from like an Etsy or you know, any type of a storefront. So yeah.
Do you have any extra for sale right now?
I have very few extra for sale, but if you give me your info, I'll let you know. I'm down to like almost a literal handful left, but I may.
Yeah. Well, I have like a flint and steel as an everyday carry, and I'd like to replace this with it.
You can. It has the see this
Yeah.
part on the left.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fire
I saw it
scraper.
on your video.
Oh, you did. Okay, good. Cool. It works. Ta-da.
So maybe one other question, and then we'll change because we
Yeah.
actually have Colin here. If you're still willing to talk about Amazon,
Yeah, sure.
go.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what the initial cost was. Looking at the size of it, I'm kind of curious as to what the cost is for the consumer, and considering all the machining process you just described, I'm kind of curious about what the margins were.
Sure. So the retail price on them is going to be $30 to $32, and then with like discounts and stuff. So the initial earliest bird, they're $25 each. To make them, ship them, and packaging worked out to be about $10 a piece. And the reason why I had as your before with wholesale, my goal is to put these into wholesale. So the packaging's going to change and get a little bit cheaper, things like that. But that ballpark, that's about what it is. So if you're looking at a retail of 30, 32, if I could wholesale them for my target $16, if it's on a Keystone 50/50 basis, then that's about right.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Just could you explain, you may have gone through it, about how you did your kind of research for gathering, targeting websites to coincide with your Kickstarter? Did you go over that, or?
No, not really.
Oh, okay.
So because I'm interested in products like this, I already knew some of them.
Gotcha.
Other than that, it was going through and just I created a spreadsheet
Yeah.
of these are the sites I'm going to send a press release to. These are the sites that I'm going to send a sample to. These are the people I'm going to contact ahead of time. And it was really cool because I actually wound up networking really well. And then even when the campaign started, I had people come to me and say, "Hey, have you, are you part of this community, or do you know this person?" Get a quick intro, and then that person went and bought 12. So like it's Google is your friend, but then really organizing that is that's really important on the pre-work, and looking at I didn't do Instagram for this, I should have, but Facebook, different like online social media, that was a great tool for spreading the word.